They wanted me gone, wiped off the map like I was a mistake. Just disappear, they whispered behind closed doors, hoping I'd vanish without a trace. Have you ever screamed inside a crowded room, yet not one soul turned to listen? Felt so invisible that even your own blood wished you away? That was my world, a silent nightmare where love was a lie and family was a cage. My name is Imogen, the black sheep, the whispered warning no one wanted to face. Before I could even dream aloud, before I took my first step, they had already written my obituary, not on paper, but etched deep in cold, unforgiving hearts. I was nothing, less than nothing. I still see it clearly, the flickering lamp in my childhood bedroom, its pale light casting monstrous shadows that danced on cracked wallpaper, like hungry ghosts coming to claim me. The silence there wasn't mere absence of sound. It was suffocating. A heavy fog pressing down on my chest, squeezing the air from my lungs. My heart thundered in my ribcage, so loud I feared it might burst through. At every family dinner, I was a ghost in flesh, a seat taken but a voice silenced. Conversations circled around me like predators. Business deals, future plans, secrets, words not meant for me. Cold stares and dismissive glances built walls higher than any prison. I was trapped in a cage of invisible pain. One desperate night, fueled by raw hope and trembling courage, I finally tried to speak. Just a whisper, a fragile crack in the walls of silence. But my father's voice came down like a guillotine, sharp and final. "You're reckless. You don't belong here." My mother's sigh was colder than the winter wind outside. "Imogen, dreams don't pay the bills." Their words didn't just sting, they shattered me. The sharp judgments, too naive, too inexperienced, not serious enough, echoed relentlessly, carving invisible scars deep into my soul. I was their tolerated mistake, their secret shame. Never their pride. They poisoned every corner of my life with indifference. No warmth, no encouragement, just endless comparisons to my siblings effortlessly glowing in the light, while I shrank deeper into the shadows, forgotten and fading. Yet beneath those bruises, a stubborn ember refused to die. A faint spark glowing in the darkest recesses of my heart whispered, "You are meant for more. You can rewrite this story." Nights were the hardest. Silent tears soaked my pillow, and my body trembled under the weight of questions too heavy to voice. Am I really not enough? Will I ever be enough? Those questions bounced like trapped echoes in a cavern of loneliness. The cruelest pain wasn't their disbelief, it was how their doubts seeped into my bones, poisoning my very sense of worth. To be surrounded by people who should love you, yet feel utterly alone, that kind of loneliness claws deep into your soul. I wasn't just fighting to be seen. I was fighting to believe I deserved to be seen. Every harsh word, every setback, fueled a quiet fire inside me. I sought validation beyond the cold walls of home in rare friendships, mentors who saw through my scars, and brutal lessons learned far from their shadows. The road was brutal. Their rejection trailed me like a storm cloud. But with every step, I grew stronger, more certain their doubts would never define me. This is where my true story begins, in the silence of a girl who refused to vanish, in the shadow of a legacy I was told I'd never lead. But how did the black sheep become the shepherd? That's a secret no one expected. If you've ever felt invisible, underestimated, or discarded by those you love, stay with me. This is a story of rising from ashes, of finding your voice when everyone tries to silence it. This is my journey, and it's only just beginning. They labeled me the family's failure before I even had a chance to prove myself. I still hear my father's cold voice slicing through the silence like a razor. "You don't belong here, Imogen. You're reckless, naive, and a liability." The room seemed to shrink around me, suffocating under the weight of his words. My mother sat quietly, lips pressed tight, avoiding my eyes like I was already a ghost. Later, her voice came soft but sharp, heavy with resignation. "Imogen, this isn't a storybook. Dreams don't pay the bills." School was no refuge. Teachers doubted me before I spoke a single word. Classmates whispered rumors that clung like shadows, and family friends shot pitying looks deeper than any insult. I was the girl who struggled, who stumbled, never fitting the mold. Every judgment was a stone piled upon my spirit, slowly crushing me. Yet beneath that weight, a spark fought to survive. I clung to hope like a lifeline, swallowing my fears and pouring every ounce of strength into proving them wrong. One night, trembling with hope, I told my older brother Lucas about a job I'd landed miles away from home. His laughter was sharp, cold. "You'll never make it." But in his eyes, between the cracks, I sometimes caught a flicker, maybe regret, maybe a secret hope that I would rise. My closest ally was Mia, my childhood friend, my rock. When tears fell freely, she whispered, "You're stronger than they'll ever know. Hold on to that." Her faith became my shield amid the fiercest storms. In my quietest moments, I touched the silver locket my mother once gave me, fragile and worn, with a faded photo of my grandmother, a woman I never met but whose strength flowed through my veins. That locket became my talisman, a reminder that even in the darkest places, light waits to be found. I buried myself in books about leadership, business, and self-worth. Claire, a fierce mentor with fire in her eyes, once told me, "The blackest sheep often weaves the brightest thread." Her words became a beacon through the shadows. The path was lonely and brutal. Rejection followed me like a shadow. Doubt gnawed at my confidence. Every victory felt like a battle won in silence. But with every step forward, I grew fiercer, more determined, ready to rewrite a story they said was already written. The real journey began rising, from neglect's ashes to the brink of power. But power comes at a price, and the legacy I was meant to inherit was tangled in more secrets and betrayals than I ever imagined. Adulthood wasn't the freedom I dreamed of, it was a new battlefield. The shadows of my past clung tighter, whispers of doubt grew louder, and every step felt like walking a tightrope stretched over a chasm of expectations and fear. Family gatherings became minefields. Each word weighed like a landmine waiting to explode. The echoes of "not good enough" no longer whispered. They shouted in cold stares and clipped remarks. I still remember that meeting like it was yesterday. The room was heavy with tension. Voices hushed as they debated the family's future. I summoned every ounce of courage to share my vision, a bold idea pulsing with hope and change. Silence swallowed the room. Every eye turned to me, some narrowing in skepticism, others frozen in disbelief. Then my father's voice cut through sharp, dismissive, final. "That's naive, Imogen. This isn't a game. This is serious business." His words weren't just rejection. They were a verdict, delivered without trial. The sting wasn't just in the words, but in the certainty behind them, as if I was destined to fail before I even began. I wanted to scream, to shatter their narrow expectations, to demand my voice be heard. But fear gripped me, fear of rejection, of widening the chasm, of confirming their darkest doubts. So I swallowed my pride, retreating into silence, donning a mask of obedience. Yet inside, a fire blazed fiercer than ever. Every cold no, every doubtful glance, every whispered insult fueled a fierce determination I barely understood. I refused to let their words define me. Beyond those suffocating walls, I carved my own refuge. Late nights, working odd jobs, devouring books on leadership, seeking mentors who believed where others doubted each lesson, was a brick in the foundation I quietly built. Step by step, I assembled the woman they never expected to see. But the fiercest battle was within. In the stillness of night, I wrestled with a relentless question echoing in my mind. Am I enough? Will I ever be enough? Doubt whispered cruel lies, threatening to snuff out every flicker of hope. Tears spilled silently. Loneliness pressed down like a weight that threatened to break me. Still, amidst the darkness, flickers of light appeared, a mentor's encouragement, a small triumph, a look of genuine recognition. They became lifelines, whispering promises of a future where I could be more than their disappointment. Family ties tangled. Some reached out with tentative support. Others retreated into fear and judgment. Lucas, once my harshest critic, haunted my thoughts with biting words. "You'll never make it, Imogen. Stay out of our way." Yet, in his eyes, I glimpsed conflict regret, a silent plea for understanding. And through it all, Mia remained my anchor. Her steady voice cut through the noise. "You're not alone. You have more strength than you know. That chapter was my crucible breaking and rebuilding, lost and found, shattered, yet fierce. The woman I was becoming emerged slowly but surely, ready to claim her place in a world that had long overlooked her. The fight for self-worth was far from over, but with every scar, every tear, every determined step, I learned one undeniable truth. I was enough. The moment everything shifted came quietly, almost unexpectedly. It was a crisp autumn morning, the kind of stillness that presses against your skin like a whisper. I was alone in my small apartment, the silence thick and heavy, the air itself seeming to hold its breath. Then the phone rang sharp, insistent, slicing through the stillness like a blade. My hands trembled as I answered. Imogen, the company is on the brink. We need you. Now. Those words crashed into me like a thunderclap. The very people who had dismissed me, counted me out, whispered doubts behind my back. They were begging for my help. I stared at the receiver, heart pounding wildly, disbelief swirling like a storm inside my mind. Was this a cruel joke? Or was the door finally cracking open after years of being slammed shut? The truth was, this was my moment. The chance to reclaim not just my future, but a legacy slipping through their fingers. Walking back into the marble halls of the family company felt like stepping onto a battlefield. The polished floors gleamed under harsh, unforgiving lights, but the air was thick, heavy with unspoken resentments and silent judgments. Every glance was a test. Skeptics and reluctant hopefuls alike watched me like a hawk. Is she ready? Can she handle this? I heard whispered behind closed doors. But beneath the doubt, a fierce fire ignited within me. This time, I would not be invisible. In the boardroom, the cold air bit as I laid out my vision for innovation and revival. Resistance met me like a concrete wall. This is how we've always done things, a seasoned executive warned, voice dripping with thinly veiled threats. Change isn't always progress. I nodded, understanding this battle was bigger than business. It was about breaking chains, the chains of old expectations, unspoken rules, and ghosts haunting every corner of the company. I listened, absorbed their fears, wove my plans carefully, step by deliberate step. Hostility surfaced in subtle ways. An old family friend, once loyal to my father, pulled me aside one afternoon, his voice low but sharp. Be careful, Imogen. Some haven't forgotten who you were. One misstep and they'll be waiting to pounce. His words stung like poison, but they only steeled my resolve. I wasn't here to prove them wrong. I was here to prove to myself that I belonged. Late nights bled into early mornings as I buried myself in financial reports, employee concerns, market trends. Exhaustion clawed at me, but the fire inside burned brighter than ever. Slowly, cracks appeared in the old guard's resistance. Allies emerged, managers with fresh ideas, employees hungry for change, even some family members tentatively extending hands. But beneath the surface, old wounds simmered. The fractures in the company mirrored fractures in my family, painful, deep, but not impossible to heal. A faded letter, discovered among my late grandmother's belongings, became my talisman. Written decades before, it spoke of hope amidst hardship, of belief that the family legacy would endure with strength and honor. In moments of doubt, I held that letter close, drawing courage from words penned long before my time. Weeks passed. Victories piled up. Key partnerships secured, outdated systems revamped, trust slowly restored. The business wasn't just surviving anymore, it was beginning to thrive. But just as the horizon brightened, life threw its harshest test yet. A betrayal from within, a trusted hand undermining critical deals, threatened to unravel everything. The revelation hit me like a tidal wave, shaking the fragile peace we had fought so hard to create. Alone in my office that night, city lights flickering through the window, I realized leadership wasn't just strategy or vision. It was resilience in heartbreak. It was standing firm when the ground beneath you crumbles. I was no longer the black sheep. I had become the shepherd guiding the flock through the storm. But this was only the beginning. The battles ahead would test every ounce of strength and grace I possessed. And deep inside, I knew my story was far from over. The aftermath of betrayal was a tempest, chaotic, relentless, and deeply personal. Trust, once fragile, lay shattered at my feet. Every conversation became a minefield. Every glance carried unspoken accusations. The company we had begun to rebuild was thrown back into turmoil, and I found myself standing squarely at the center of the storm, feeling the crushing weight of responsibility pressing down on my shoulders. Family gatherings, once uneasy truce zones, had transformed into battlegrounds. Relatives who had doubted me before now regarded me with a complicated blend of resentment and grudging respect. Behind closed doors, whispers questioned my ability. Was I truly the right person to lead, or just a temporary placeholder until someone more suitable arrived? Open challenges surfaced, voices thick with bitterness, old wounds reopened as fresh scars. One night, after a particularly heated meeting, my older brother Lucas confronted me in a dimly lit hallway. His face was a mask, anger, pain, and something unspoken flickering in his eyes. "You think you're ready for this?" His voice low but fierce. "You don't understand what it means to carry this family's legacy." His words weren't just a challenge. They were a plea, a fractured expression of fear and pride tangled together. For a moment, I saw not an adversary, but a man caught between love for family and his own insecurities. That moment haunted me, haunting my quiet hours. I realized beneath the power struggles and resentments lay a shared vulnerability, a desperate wish to protect what mattered most, even if it meant resisting change. This wasn't just control, it was identity, belonging. Amid this turmoil, I found unexpected allies. A senior manager, once wary of my leadership, quietly stepped forward. She shared her own story, underestimated, overlooked, and together we forged a partnership rooted in mutual respect and shared vision. Her support reminded me leadership wasn't a solitary climb. It was a collective journey. At home, the atmosphere shifted slowly but unevenly. My mother, once distant and cold, began to soften. Rare smiles blossomed, and in quiet moments, her eyes held new warmth. My father remained stoic, but in fleeting moments, I glimpsed pride and perhaps regret. Yet forgiveness was neither swift nor easy. It was a winding road marked by setbacks and breakthroughs. I learned to forgive not just them, but myself. For holding on to pain, for doubting my worth, for fearing failure. This healing became the foundation for the woman I was becoming. Through these challenges, I clung to a small, worn ring, a gift from my mother years ago. Simple, silver, heavy with meaning. Not just jewelry. A talisman reminding me that beneath every crack and scar, something precious remained. I wore it as a promise. To endure. To rise. To claim my place. The revival of the company mirrored my personal transformation. Every rebuilt partnership, every innovation launched, echoed my growth. The fractures in family reflected the company's struggles, painful, complex, but not insurmountable. In quiet late nights, alone in my office, I reflected on how far I'd come. Victories tasted sweeter because of the battles. Scars felt less like burdens, more like threads weaving me whole. I wasn't just maintaining a legacy. I was redefining it. I envisioned a future where the company wasn't a relic, but a beacon of progress and inclusion. A place where every voice, including mine, mattered. This vision fueled me through the darkest hours. The path ahead remained uncertain, dotted with challenges old and new. But I met it with courage, born of experience, and a heart open to growth. True leadership, I realized, wasn't perfection. It was authenticity. Embracing flaws, facing fears, pushing forward despite them, building bridges where walls once stood, finding light in the deepest shadows. I invited those around me, family, colleagues, friends, to join this journey. I shared not just successes, but vulnerabilities, creating space for trust to grow. In those moments, I understood power wasn't control. It was connection, strength from empathy, patience, and courage to listen. Looking back, I saw the girl who once felt invisible transform into a woman leading with heart and purpose. Scars remained, but they no longer defined me. They were part of the tapestry of my story. The future was unwritten, filled with promise and challenge alike. But I faced it with hope, strength, and an open heart. The dust had barely settled after the company's near collapse when I realized the hardest battles were still ahead. These battles didn't unfold in boardrooms or financial reports, they played out in the fragile terrain of family, heart, and history. My role had shifted. I was no longer just the one tasked with steering a business through troubled waters. I was navigating a tangled web woven with love, resentment, pride, and forgiveness, emotions as volatile as they were deep. At first, the transformation was exhilarating. The invisible daughter, the family's black sheep, was now a leader, a decision-maker, someone others looked to for guidance and strength. Yet with power came an unexpected weight, a silent tension threading through family dinners, phone calls, and stolen moments of quiet. Some family members embraced the change with open arms. Tentative trust shone in their eyes, and I sensed a flicker of hope for a new chapter. Others watched with guarded suspicion, their doubts cloaked beneath polite smiles. Were they waiting for the real heir to return? Did they see me as temporary, a placeholder until the old order reclaimed its throne? The balance was delicate, like walking a tightrope stretched high above old wounds and unspoken grievances. Every word I spoke was measured, every choice a potential spark in an already volatile room. I felt the pressure to maintain respect while asserting myself, a constant negotiation between vulnerability and strength. One evening, after a particularly strained dinner, Lucas pulled me aside. His face was unreadable, a mixture of frustration, hurt, and something unsaid. "You think you can just come in here and change everything?" His voice was low but fierce. "You don't understand what it means to carry this family's legacy." There was anger. Yes, but beneath it, I saw fear. A fear of losing what had always been. And maybe, a fear of losing me. That conversation haunted me for days. I realized beneath the power struggles and old resentments lay a shared vulnerability. A desperate desire to protect what mattered most, even if it meant resisting change. This wasn't just about control. It was about belonging. About identity. In the eye of the storm, I found unexpected solace. A longtime family friend, once distant, reached out quietly. "Imogen," she said softly, "sometimes the hardest part isn't climbing the mountain. It's standing firm when the ground shifts beneath you." Her words reminded me leadership wasn't a lonely path. It was built on connection and trust. At home, my parents' reactions were complex. My mother, once distant and cold, began to soften. Rare smiles blossomed, and her eyes held new warmth when we spoke. My father remained stoic, but in quiet moments, I glimpsed pride and perhaps regret. Forgiveness was neither swift nor easy. It was a winding road marked by setbacks and breakthroughs. I learned to forgive not just them, but myself for holding on to pain, for doubting my worth, for fearing failure. Healing became the foundation for the woman I was becoming. I clung to a small, worn ring, my mother's gift from years before, simple and silver, heavy with meaning. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a talisman, a reminder that beneath every crack and scar, something precious remained. I wore it as a promise to myself. To endure. To rise. To claim my place. Under my leadership, the company evolved. New projects sparked innovation. Teams rallied around a vision of growth and inclusion. The family's old wounds began to heal, not erased, but transformed through honesty and effort. Still, doubts lingered. Was I truly ready to carry this legacy? Could I balance leadership's demands with fragile family bonds? These questions surfaced in quiet moments, testing my resolve. Yet each challenge made me stronger. I learned true strength came not from perfection, but from courage and authenticity. Vulnerability became power. Setting boundaries, an act of self-love. My journey taught me leadership is as much about empathy as strategy, as much about listening as directing. I became a bridge between past and future, tradition and change. As I looked ahead, I carried lessons of resilience and forgiveness. Knowing worth isn't measured by others, but by the love and respect we hold for ourselves. The story isn't finished. The road ahead is uncertain, filled with promise and challenge alike. But I face it with hope, strength, and an open heart. The nights were long, often filled with a quiet struggle that no one else could see. The battles within me were as fierce as any outside those marble walls, a constant war between doubt and determination, fear and courage, past wounds and future hopes. I often found myself alone in my office, the city lights flickering through the window, casting long shadows that danced like reminders of all I had endured. The weight of legacy pressed heavily on my shoulders, a burden both daunting and defining. Yet, amidst the solitude, I discovered something profound. Leadership was more than strategy, more than vision. It was resilience, the kind that demands standing firm when the ground beneath crumbles, when allies become adversaries, when hope feels fragile. I was no longer the black sheep. I had become the shepherd, guiding the flock through storms that threatened to tear us apart. But the true test had just begun. Betrayal cut deeper than any external threat. A trusted hand, someone I had once counted on, was undermining critical deals, sabotaging progress with quiet malice. The revelation crashed over me like a tidal wave, shaking the fragile peace we had fought so hard to build. That night, alone in my office, I realized leadership was also heartbreak. It was standing strong when everything familiar threatened to collapse. The company I was rebuilding was a reflection of myself scarred, yet fiercely alive. Family gatherings turned colder, suspicion thickening the air like an unspoken storm. Those who had doubted me now regarded me with a complicated blend of resentment and grudging respect. Whispers questioned my right to lead, as though my place was still up for debate. Voices thick with bitterness reopened old wounds that had barely begun to heal. One evening, after a particularly tense meeting, Lucas confronted me in the shadowed hallway. His anger was sharp, but beneath it, I saw fear of losing not only control but also me. "You think you're ready for this?" he challenged. "You don't understand what it means to carry this family's legacy." His words echoed long after, a painful reminder that leadership wasn't just about business. It was about navigating tangled webs of love, pride, and vulnerability. In the midst of turmoil, unexpected allies emerged. A senior manager, once skeptical, reached out with quiet understanding. She shared her own story of being underestimated and overlooked. Together, we forged a partnership rooted in respect and shared purpose. Her support reminded me leadership was a collective journey, not a solitary climb. At home, change came slowly but surely. My mother's distant coldness gave way to rare smiles and moments of warmth. My father's stoic exterior softened in quiet, fleeting glances. Forgiveness was a winding path, marked by setbacks and breakthroughs. I learned to forgive not just them, but myself, for holding on to pain, for doubting my worth, for fearing failure. Healing became the bedrock upon which I built my strength. I held tight to a small silver ring, a gift from my mother, simple, worn, heavy with meaning. It was more than jewelry. It was a talisman reminding me that beneath every crack and scar, something precious remained. I wore it as a promise to endure, to rise, to claim my place. The company's revival mirrored my own transformation. New initiatives sparked innovation. Teams rallied around a vision of growth and inclusion. The family's old wounds began to heal, not erased, but transformed by honesty and effort. Though doubts lingered, was I truly ready? Could I balance leadership's demands with fragile family ties? These questions tested me, yet each challenge forged me stronger. I learned that true strength came from courage, authenticity, and the vulnerability to embrace both. I became a bridge between past and future, tradition and change. As I looked forward, I carried with me lessons of resilience and forgiveness. I knew my worth wasn't defined by others, but by the love and respect I held for myself. The road ahead remained uncertain, filled with promise, challenge, and growth. But I faced it with hope, strength, and an open heart. This was my story, far from finished, yet already powerful. The dust had barely settled from the company's near collapse when I realized the hardest battles lay not in the boardrooms but in the fragile terrain of family and heart. Leadership was no longer just about strategy or vision. It was about navigating a tangled web of love, resentment, pride, and forgiveness emotions as complex and volatile as any business challenge. At first, the shift was exhilarating. I was no longer the invisible daughter, the family's black sheep. I was a leader, a decision maker, someone others looked to for guidance and strength. But power carried its own quiet weight, a tension threading through family dinners, phone calls, and stolen moments. Some family members embraced the change with open arms, tentative trust shining in their eyes. Others watched with guarded suspicion, uncertain whether they could accept this new reality or if they were just waiting for the real heir to return. The balance was delicate, like walking a tightrope stretched above old wounds and unspoken grievances. Every word I spoke was measured, every choice a potential spark in an already volatile room. I felt the pressure to maintain respect while asserting myself, a constant negotiation between vulnerability and strength. One evening, after a particularly strained dinner, Lucas pulled me aside. His face unreadable, a mixture of frustration, hurt, and something unspoken. "You think you can just come in here and change everything?" His voice was low but fierce. "You don't understand what it means to carry this family's legacy." There was anger, yes, but beneath it I saw fear. A fear of losing what had always been. And maybe a fear of losing me. That conversation haunted me for days. I realized beneath the power struggles and old resentments lay a shared vulnerability. A desperate desire to protect what mattered most, even if it meant resisting change. This wasn't just control, it was identity, belonging. In the eye of the storm, I found unexpected solace. A longtime family friend, once distant, reached out quietly. "Imogen," she said softly, "sometimes the hardest part isn't climbing the mountain. It's standing firm when the ground shifts beneath you." Her words reminded me leadership wasn't a lonely path. It was built on connection and trust. At home, my parents' reactions were complex. My mother, once distant and cold, began to soften. Rare smiles blossomed, and her eyes held new warmth when we spoke. My father remained stoic, but in quiet moments I glimpsed pride and perhaps regret. Forgiveness was neither swift nor easy. It was a winding road marked by setbacks and breakthroughs. I learned to forgive not just them, but myself for holding on to pain, for doubting my worth, for fearing failure. Healing became the foundation for the woman I was becoming. I clung to a small, worn ring, my mother's gift from years before. Simple, silver, heavy with meaning. It wasn't just jewelry. It was a talisman reminding me that beneath every crack and scar, something precious remained. I wore it as a promise to myself to endure, to rise, to claim my place. Under my leadership, the company evolved. New projects sparked innovation. Teams rallied around a vision of growth and inclusion. The family's old wounds began to heal, not erased, but transformed through honesty and effort. Still, doubts lingered. Was I truly ready to carry this legacy? Could I balance leadership's demands with fragile family bonds? These questions surfaced in quiet moments, testing my resolve. Yet each challenge made me stronger. I learned true strength came not from perfection, but from courage and authenticity. Vulnerability became power. Setting boundaries, an act of self-love. My journey taught me leadership is as much about empathy as strategy, as much about listening as directing. I became a bridge between past and future, tradition and change. As I look ahead, I carry lessons of resilience and forgiveness. Knowing worth isn't measured by others, but by the love and respect we hold for ourselves. The story isn't finished. The road ahead is uncertain, filled with promise and challenge alike. But I face it with hope, strength, and an open heart. Standing here now, I look back at the winding road that brought me from invisible to indispensable, from doubt to self-acceptance. I am no longer the girl dismissed the family's forgotten shadow. I am Imogen, a woman who has reclaimed her worth, embraced her imperfections, and stepped fully into the light of her own truth. The journey here was anything but easy. Setbacks tested my resolve, hope seemed fragile, nights were spent wrestling with fear and uncertainty. Yet every tear, every silent struggle, every hard-won victory laid the foundation of who I am today. I've come to understand that being enough isn't about fitting someone else's mold or meeting impossible expectations. It's about embracing every piece of yourself, scars, strengths, vulnerabilities, and knowing your value is inherent, not given by others. This realization was both terrifying and liberating. For the first time, I stopped seeking permission to be myself. I learned to speak kindly to my inner voice, fiercely guard my peace, and nurture a relationship grounded in compassion and respect. My relationships with family have transformed too. They're far from perfect. Old wounds still ache, some scars sting unexpectedly, but we have built a new foundation. Honesty, forgiveness, mutual understanding. Most importantly, I've learned to surround myself with people who truly see me, who celebrate not only the person I was expected to be, but the complex, resilient, beautiful woman I've become. If you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or unworthy, know this: your worth is intrinsic. It doesn't depend on anyone else's approval or validation. Your light is inside you, waiting to be claimed and nurtured. Your story matters. Your voice deserves to be heard. I hope my journey offers you a glimmer of hope, a reminder it's never too late to reclaim your worth, speak your truth, and live authentically. So, what's next? For me, it's continuing to grow, heal, and embrace the freedom of being unapologetically myself. It's about living boldly, loving deeply, and never forgetting the girl who fought so hard just to be seen. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If my story touched you, share your own. Together, let's create a space where healing and empowerment thrive. And if this story resonates, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you are enough. You always have been, and you always will be.